In this video, I'm going to give you 6 budget-friendly polyester string options to choose from if you've never tried a polyester string before, or if you're just wanting to save a little bit of money the next time you go to get your racket restrung. And at the end of the video, I'm also going to give you my personal favorite budget-friendly recommendation option that isn't actually going to be in the list. So stay tuned to the end of the video to figure out what that is. Now, if you don't know who I am, my name is Brody Taylor. I've been working in a tennis retail store for the past 8+ years, and I've helped many people with string recommendations, whether that be to help prevent tennis elbow, make sure that they have the right string for their game at the current moment, or just to try something new that they've never thought about before. And budget is one of the things that comes up a lot. It's a very important topic for people who are wanting to get their rackets restrung. So I figured this would be a good general guide for you to kind of get an idea of what else is out there besides what you may have in your racket already. So with that being said, let's get started. For this list to make sense, what's going to happen here in the next few minutes is I'm going to give you a brief explanation about what polyester tennis strings are designed to do if you don't know. If you do know, it'll just be a little bit of a quick refresher so we're all on the same page. And then we'll go through each string on the list individually. Now, the list is separated into 2 parts. The first part is going to be round polyester tennis strings, and the second part is going to be sided polyester tennis strings. So that way you have a bunch of different options to choose from, depending upon what string you're using currently and where you may want to go with the new string that you're looking to get put into your racket. With polyester tennis strings, if you do know, this will just be kind of a little bit of a refresher, but if you don't know, this will just be important information to know going forward, just so that way we're all on the same page. Polyester tennis strings are designed to help you generate more spin and more control out of the current racket you are using. They do also tend to be more durable, so they don't break as often as some other types of strings like multi-filaments or synthetic guts. However, polyester strings are not very powerful on their own. There are very few that are going to be focused on power, and they are also very hard on the arm typically. So if you have tennis elbow or you want to avoid tennis elbow, maybe using a full polyester tennis string is something to avoid right now until you're either recovered or you are comfortable enough working with someone that knows what they're talking about with strings in order to actually provide you a good recommendation about when to maybe make that switch. So with that being said, we'll move into the list now as we got the basics out of the way. Now, as you can see here, we do have our board separated into the different types of polys that we're going to be talking about. We got the round polys over here, which I'll explain first. Then we have the sided polyesters over here, which I'll explain after we finish with the round. And then, of course, over here, this is the mystery string that I was telling you about a little bit earlier that I will reveal after we get through all of these. So the very first round poly that I'm going to mention is actually from Turna, and it is called Big Hitter Silver. And this is just normal Big Hitter Silver. This is not Big Hitter Silver 7. That's completely different. This is just normal Big Hitter because this is a round polyester, and I believe it's also about $7 for the entire pack. With Turna Big Hitter Silver, this string has been around for me for many years. I actually used this string for the good majority of my entire senior year season of high school tennis. And one of the reasons I did that, A, was because it was so cheap, as you saw, being only $7. But B, with it also being a round polyester and my game predominantly being a lot more flat and not using as much spin, this is where I felt Turna Big Hitter Silver was a very good option for me, especially balling on a budget, because in high school, I only really worked weekends at the job I was at, so I couldn't really have too much discretionary income to be paying for restringing and actual tennis strings, even though I worked at the tennis stores, but it was only 2 days a week. So I made the most of what I had, and in my opinion, Turna Big Hitter Silver is very similar to Luxilon ALU Power. This is a pretty common comparison in the actual tennis community just because they're both round polyesters. They are going to be a little bit more on the power side. I personally feel that Turna Big Hitter Silver does tend to hold tension a little bit better than ALU Power does, which is a surprising take typically, especially when you consider that Luxilon ALU Power is $22 a pack, or maybe a little bit more than that right now. So yeah, I like Big Hitter. I think it's a great string, especially to try or for your first polyester to try. It's not going to break the bank. If you don't like it, it was $7. And then you just go back to your multi-filament, or you try a different polyester because you're like, I liked a little bit of what's going on, not everything, but we're taking a step in the right direction. The other reason I think Turn a Big Hitter Silver is so cool is because one of the ladies that I work with at the store, her son actually was one of the top 5 junior players in all of the US when he was playing as a junior. And this was the actual string that he used in his racket, and he just dominated. So I was like, that's always cool. And it's like, yeah, you don't need to spend a ton of money to get the most out of your equipment. That's where I think Turn a Big Hitter Silver comes in. I think it does very well, and I have nothing but good things to say about it overall. Number 2 is from a brand known as Genesis, and this is going to be called White Magic. Again, it's on this side, so it's round, and White Magic, that is about $8. Coming out of nowhere, Genesis White Magic. Now, this is probably a string most people have never heard of. You've probably never even heard of Genesis as a string company itself. You might have if you're on the college scene. I do know that they have sometimes supplied colleges with strings for their players because they are not as expensive. But with White Magic being a round polyester as well as being an actual white string, I compared both White Magic and Black Magic. I played both of them against each other. White Magic to me just had a little bit more feel to it, so it was a little bit more responsive, and I just felt like I was more connected to the ball and my racket when actually using this. Whereas when I compared it to Black Magic felt a little bit more dead, almost like a Babolat RPM Blast, but without the spin, of course, because it doesn't have the sidings. Both Black Magic and White Magic are round polyester strings. So that's where I came in with White Magic. They're both about the same dollars, rounded up to about $8. I think if you actually look at the price right now for them currently, they're at about $7.90 a pack. So again, like with Big Hitter, you're not spending a lot of money in order to actually get this in your racket. And I think it's just going to be a good, easy one to try if you're just wanting to try polyester for the first time, especially if you're coming from a multi-filament string or a synthetic gut, because those are also already circular, and it'll just be an easy way to get going into the racket. And number 3, this one is going to be the most expensive of the 3 listed here, this one being from Head, and that is Head Sonic Pro. And Sonic Pro is going to be about a whopping, I know, $11. Crazy. All right, so Head Sonic Pro. This is probably the biggest name brand that we've had so far on the list, unless you count Turna because of the Turna grip, that light blue grip that doesn't slip. But most people probably don't even know that Turna makes strings. They just know them for that grip, so I'd say Head's a little bit bigger, just a little bit. Now, with Head Sonic Pro, the thing about Head rackets is that they used to, many years ago, I believe, come with a free string with purchase of racket. And Sonic Pro was one of those choices. I believe it was Sonic Pro, Head Velocity, which is their multi-filament, or Head Synthetic Gut. You had those 3 options based off what your preference was and what the conversation we were having with the person at the retail store that you were getting your racket at. So with Sonic Pro, Head felt that it was just an easy way to get into polyester. It's not very hard on the arm compared to other polyesters that typically have sides. Those ones do tend to usually cost tennis elbow a little bit more. And Head just wanted a nice, easy way for people to try polyester to see what they thought. Now, Head has made a ton of strings, both round and sided. They mainly focus on round tennis strings, so that's why I do tend to lean towards Head Sonic Pro as a very easy starting out point, especially with the budget-friendly option of only about $11 like I wrote down. And it's just going to be a good all-around poly. It's not going to focus on any one thing in particular. It's still going to help give you a little bit of that spin and that control like a polyester is supposed to, but it's not going to focus on any one thing in particular. Whereas, say, if you look at Head Hawk Power, which only comes in the 17 gauge, that's going to be a little bit more of a power-focused polyester. It's still round, but much more expensive. You have Head Hawk Touch, which is the strings of Yonex Sinner and Alexander Zverev. That's going to focus a little bit more on feel, try and be a little bit softer, be a little bit more powerful, but much more expensive than Sonic Pro. So Sonic Pro is just the good all-around baseline to get into poly, see what you think about it, and then if you like Sonic Pro, then you then have a little bit more of a chance to like the other head polyester strings, just because being made from the same company, they do typically tend to have a very similar feel, but just slight differences in order to tweak whatever you want out of your game currently. Then we move over to the sided strings, and the very first sided string that we're going to talk about, this one is going to be Volkl, and if you've watched my channel before, you probably know what I'm about to write here. This is going to be Volkl Cyclone, and for the amount of sides that it has, it's about 8+, but it's also shaped like a cog. That's why I say the plus. So it has a lot of sides. It may have more. I just know it's more than 8. And this is usually about $9 per pack. Volkl Cyclone, the string with arguably the most sides on this list entirely. Now, the reason Cyclone is here up first, not only because of the fact that it's $9 per pack, roughly, is the fact that this has been a string that the mentor that I grew up with and was learning all of or most of my tennis knowledge from in person. This was one of his favorite strings, and he would use this at the store quite a bit because if you're coming from a multi-filament string or a synthetic gut string or any other round string, which is designed to be a little bit more powerful and a little bit easier on your arm, Cyclone is going to be kind of like a drastic jump and a very drastic shift into an actual sided string. So it's kind of the other end of the extreme. If you want to go from round poly to shaped poly and you really want to see like what a shaped poly can do at its most potential in terms of how many sides you're going to get and what that's going to feel like, that's where Cyclone comes in. With it only being about $9, it's a very easy way for people to get into and try a sided poly because usually with Volkl Cyclone, one of two things is going to happen. They're either going to absolutely hate it and they'll be like, this is not what I wanted. Let's maybe go down. Like there's a little bit of good spin, but no, I want a little bit more power and I want to be able to actually feel the ball a little bit more. It's like fair. It's only $9, don't worry. And two, they absolutely love it and they just stick with that because it's very budget friendly and it plays very well for them. It's usually one of those two options. Very rarely is it something else. So that's where Cyclone can come in and give you like the extreme side of sided polys. And then if that's too much, you can work your way back pretty easily and know you only spent less than $10 to get it put in rather than worrying that you spent $20 on something like a Yonex Polytour spin or something or like $20 on a Babolat RPM Blast. Number 2 is then going to be from Yonex, which is, I believe, the most budget-friendly Yonex polyester string. This is still going to be Polytour Drive. This is actually going to be 8-sided as well, and it doesn't have any more than that. I counted, don't worry. And this is also going to be about $10. Funny that I mentioned Yonex when I was talking about Volkl Cyclone because Polytour Drive is the next one on the list, as you saw. Now, with Polytour Drive, this came out, I believe it was last year in 2024. Don't quote me on that, but fact check me. The thing with Polytour Drive having 8 sides is that this is essentially a cheap version of Babolat RPM Blast. Some people even say it's a cheap version of Yonex Polytour Rev, which is one of their $22 strings. But it's like with Cyclone, a very easy way to go to a more extreme side of sided polyesters to see if this is something that is going to work for your game specifically. I do remember when the Yonex rep came in and was telling us about Polytour Drive. He was actually telling us a story about another shop owner he was talking to. And that shop owner was pretty skeptical of it. He's like, why are you doing this? And why would I even consider selling this? It's pretty much the exact same thing as Polytour Rev, and it's almost the exact same thing as RPM Blast. So why in the world would I put that in someone else's racket over those two strings when they already like those? The Yonex rep was like, well, that's a fair point. these strings are pretty similar, and they're going to play similar. They are just going to have a little bit different feel. Polytour Dry will have a little bit more feel to it, have arguably a little bit more spin, but most people, they won't want to change, and I completely get that. And then the shopkeeper asks again. He's like, so then why should I buy it, or why should I invest into it? And the Yonex rep says, he's like, well, because it's $10. And then the shopkeeper's eyes kind of widen. He's like, I can make that work. So it's just a very, very easy way to get into an 8-sided poly. And if you end up trying it, you don't like it, it's like, okay, you spent $10, nothing crazy, nothing extremely exorbitant. So just an easy way to go about trying it, and just to try a Yonex string to see if you've never tried that brand before, what they do have to offer. Then finally, the third polyester that we're going to be talking about comes all the way from a brand most people know in tennis, and that is Solinco. And you might be able to guess what I'm going here. It is Solinco Hyper G Soft. I got some of you, didn't I? Some of you thought I was just going to put regular Hyper G, but no, Hyper G Soft. And this is 4-sided and is typically about $14, which is the most expensive string on this list. May or may not be as expensive as what the mystery one is, but we'll find out here shortly. Solinco Hyper G Soft. Funnily enough, about me getting this reel, this was not mine. I did not pay for this. I got this from a friend who got this reel from their friend who didn't want it anymore. My friend got this reel, thought it was normal Hyper G, put one full racket of this in there, and realized it wasn't regular Hyper G. He's like, I don't want this anymore. And I was like, can I have it? He's like, sure. And I was like, yes. So I got this now. But with Hyper G Soft, the thing about this one is mainly here going as a very easy introduction to polyesters. If you're coming from a round polyester or a multi-filament and you're wanting to not run the risk of hurting your arm as much because of Hyper G Soft and the way it's constructed. This is going to be a little bit of a much easier feeling on your arm, even though it still has the same 4 sides as normal Hyper G does. But it's just, from what I've seen and what I've talked to players who have used both Hyper G Soft compared to normal Hyper G, or even Torbite to Torbite Soft, the softer versions do tend to absorb a little bit more of the shock and the impact before it gets to your arm and your elbow to cause tennis elbow. So I think it's a good, easy way to go and actually see how a 4-sided string is going to play if you're coming from that rounder polyester, or if you're coming from a round multi-filament or synthetic gut. However, with this string also being $14 and being the most expensive on this list in itself, that's why it came last. I wanted to make sure that you had the other options to choose from first, in case one of those worked out before you went to Solinco Hyper G Soft. Solinco Hyper G Soft, there's not really too much bad to say about it. I would say it leans more towards the spin side and the control side. Not as much power to it, but it's a little bit more powerful than Hyper G in itself, just because it is a little bit of that softer material. But besides that, very, very similar, very, very easy to get into. And there's a reason a lot of people have moved to Solinco Hyper G and Hyper G Soft. It does well, and that's where if you want to pay just a little bit more of a premium price, then it does have the potential for you to actually really, really like and play well with the string itself. So that's the list. That's all 6. But like I said in the beginning, there's one more that I haven't talked about yet that is my personal favorite. So let's talk about it right now. The final mystery string, one of my personal favorites, like I said. This one is actually from Technifiber. And this string has 0 sides to it. So it is a round poly, just like Big Hitter, like Genesis, like Head Sonic Pro. And it's about, what is it? It's about $13. So a little bit more on the expensive side, like Hyper G Soft. But this string from Technifiber is Technifiber Ice Code. Ice Code has worked a lot for me in many, many different situations. Not only for myself, but also for people that I've helped with at the store. With ice coat being a round poly, it is going to be a little bit easier on the arm, and it's going to be a little bit more powerful compared to most other polyesters. I told you earlier, not many polyesters do focus on being powerful just because they're trying to focus on the spin and the control. Ice coat is a little bit different where it focuses a little bit more on the power side and not as much on the spin side because of it having that rounder texture and just being a little bit better at absorbing the impact and reflecting it back at the opponent to help give you more power. I've had people that have worked with me and they have switched to this string from Babolat RPM Power because it has better feel to it and just a little bit more power. That's been a big switch. I had one guy who he would string his head speed MPs. He has 3 of them. He used to string all 3 of them with RPM Power. He'd get them all strung at the same time. And I was like, hey man, I know you like this string, but I think there's one other that would be very similar, a little bit more power, a little bit better feel, and a little bit easier on your arm. And I think you may like it a little bit more. He's like, okay, cool, let's try it. And so he tried it and he has not looked back. He has continued to get ice coat every single time. And we made this switch, I want to say earlier this year in about January, February. And he's still going with it to this day, getting his rackets restrung constantly to make sure they're fresh because he's playing a lot. But ice coat has worked out wonderfully for him and he loves it. I've also had this string work out with a few of my friends. One of them was using Luxilon 4G before. He switched to ice coat to try it and he really liked it. He would say he probably would go back to ice coat once he gets back up to playing because unfortunately right now he is recovering from, I believe he tore his Achilles. Not fun, but he's recovering. He should be back here soon and I can't wait to play with him again. And then I have another friend. He's using a Head Speed Pro. My previous one that tore the Achilles, he was using a Wilson Blade 98 16x19. My other friend that really liked ice coat, he was using it in an 18x20 in his Head Speed Pro. And he really liked it because of the extra power he got, because the actual racket itself was helping to give him the control. And I just loved it for the all-around playability of ice coat. That one is probably one of my favorite strings that I have ever played with, not just being budget friendly on this list. And the fact that it's only about $13 is one of the reasons why I say you do not need to spend a lot of money in order to get some of the best equipment for your actual tennis game. So that has been my secret string that I usually keep in the back of my mind whenever anyone's talking with me, depending upon if it works, if I think it'll work well for their situation. Not all the time will it, but it's a great one. People don't usually talk about it enough, and I think it deserves a little bit more attention. So, with that being said, that's my list. If you made it to the end of the video, comment down below about ice coat. Just say the word ice in your comment so that way I know that you actually made it to the end of the video, because if you didn't, you would never know I was going to mention this. So I want to see who's actually made it this far. And with that being said, if you like the video, leave a like on it. Comment down below any questions you have about these strings, or if you know any other budget-friendly tennis strings, so that way more people can know about it and try it, so that way we don't have to spend so much money when we go to get our rackets restrung next. And subscribe to the channel so we can grow this channel and get the information out there from the people that have it to the people that need it. And, as always, take care.